Hi and welcome to this course. My name is Maximilian Schwarzmuller and I will be your instructor in this course about Go. Now, Go is an amazing and very popular programming language which you can use for building all kinds of things. And in this course, you're going to learn Go from the ground up without any prior Go knowledge being required. You don't need to know anything about Go, you will learn it all step by step in great detail with this course. And you're going to learn it all not just with boring theory, but instead with many mini examples and demos and small practice applications so that you don't just learn about these concepts in some abstract way, but so that you can apply them to real problems and see how all these core concepts work together. And therefore, without any further ado, let's dive into the most important question right away. What exactly is Go and how does this programming language work? So, what exactly is Go, or Golang, as it's also sometimes called? Go is a programming language, and to be specifically, it's a statically typed, compiled, open source programming language that was originally designed and developed by Google, by a couple of engineers working at Google. And it was developed by those engineers to solve some specific problems those engineers were facing at Google when working at specific applications Google needed. But more on that in a second. Let's focus on those statically typed and compiled parts for now. What does that mean? Statically typed means that value types are defined in advance. If you create a variable, a data container in your program, something we will of course learn about in this course, that variable will have a clearly assigned and defined type. Which means that if you have some variable that stores a number, you can't suddenly store a string, so text, inside of it. And if you worked with other programming languages like JavaScript before, then this is not something you can take for granted, because in other programming languages like JavaScript, it is absolutely fine to have a variable that starts with storing a number and then suddenly may store a string. In Go, that's not allowed, and that adds extra safety to your program, where your values and your variables that hold those values are more predictable. Now, compiled means that all your code that you write is compiled, so converted, you could say, into machine code before it executes. And that's also not something that necessarily happens in every programming language, because there are other languages like JavaScript again, which are actually not compiled ahead of time, but which instead are converted into machine code right when they are being executed. So when your code executes. So it's compiled on demand, you could say. And compiling it ahead of time, which is what we do with Go, can increase the overall program performance because it's not happening whilst your code is executing. Now, these are some key traits of the Go programming language, and these are some traits that make Go popular. Now, Go is a general purpose programming language that can be used to build all kinds of things, but it is most suitable for scalable web services or web servers. If you're building complex backends for your website or anything like that, or for large scale systems in general. And you might remember that a couple of minutes ago I mentioned that Go was developed by Google engineers. Well, of course, Google, being a large enterprise, has a lot of large-scale systems and web services, and that's why they did come up with Go to basically make their web services more performant, more scalable, and to have a programming language that would be easy to use for that task. That's how Go was born. Now, even though Go was developed and invented by Google and Google engineers, Google is no longer the only company using Go. Instead, a lot of big companies have embraced Go since it can help them speed up their large scale systems as well. For example, Dropbox also migrated from Python to Go simply because they determined that Go would be a better language for them to maintain and develop their product and their systems that are behind their product. Now, another large company that embraces Go would be Uber, for example. They moved to Go to start building the backends for certain products they offer or for certain features their products use, since they also determined that Go would be a good choice for them. And there are many other examples, of course, many other companies that are using Go, mostly for network services or backend web services. But another very popular example you might have heard about would be Yugo, a static site generator, a piece of software you can install on your system to build websites statically. Now, if that doesn't tell you anything, this is simply a way of building static sites, so websites that only consist of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and don't necessarily have any backend code, with help of a generator that pulls in data from different data sources, like markdown files or a database, and then generates all the HTML documents that make up your site from those data sources. That's in a nutshell what a static site generator is, and Yugo is a very popular static site generator that is built with Go, so which code base was written in Go. And that is another popular tool, which is an example for a non-web service that's also built with Go. Sure, it's a tool that is about building websites, but Yugo itself is a command line tool which you run on your computer during development. It's not a web service itself. So as you can tell, there are quite a lot of use cases and companies that are using Go, but why specifically did they choose Go? I mean, I did mention that Go is especially great for large-scale systems and web servers, but why is that the case? That's the case because Go, when it was developed by those Google engineers, was inspired by C++, Java, and Python, since these were the main programming languages Google was using at the time Go was developed. And these engineers simply tried to combine the best pieces of all those programming languages and mix them into a brand new language. They wanted to get the performance of C++, but come up with an easier syntax, a better developer experience, and faster compilation times than C++ typically has them. They wanted to take the strict typing that's built into Java and C++ to keep that code safety and avoid unnecessary errors. And they also wanted the simplicity of Python, but have a better performance than Python has it in some bigger projects, potentially at least. Performance there can be worse with Python than with other programming languages. And they also wanted a lot of built-in core features so that Go is ready to use without having to install a bunch of third-party libraries right at the start. But at the same time, they of course still wanted great support for third-party code and third-party libraries. And these were the main goals that these developers followed when they developed Go. And in the end, they achieved those goals. Go is fairly simple, has a nice syntax, a lot of built-in developer convenience and support. It has types, it has fast compilation, and it produces programs that also are very scalable and offer great performance. Nonetheless, just as with all programming languages, there still are use cases and scenarios where Go is great, and there are some use cases where better programming languages might exist. For example, Go is awesome for web services and web apps, as I mentioned before, and as I showed with the examples of Uber and Dropbox. And it's also pretty good for task automation, so for scripts or command line programs like Hugo. Now, there might be better alternatives available though if we think about building games. If you want to build a game, maybe even a 3D game, you can certainly find a way of doing that with Go, but there might be programming languages that are better suited for that, like C++. Or you take a game engine like Unity, which allows you to write your game logic with C#. Other examples could include desktop apps or mobile apps, where Go might not necessarily be the number one language. And that's it for now, though. Now you have at least a general idea of what Go is, how it was developed, which problems it solves, and what its main advantages and use cases are. And now in this course, I'm going to teach you these core basics that you need to know about Go so that you can dig deeper into it and so that you can get started building your own Go programs.